All right. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Effing with the Ineffable. I am Zoe.
And I am Smokey P, which
And
this week stands for Pendragon, because I am the rightful heir to the Arthurian throne.
Wow.
I don't usually make that known because I think a lot of people would be jealous. But
I didn't realize P could stand for different things. Maybe we should have a different P every time.
different P every week.
Yeah, this is our first time filming in, I don't know, like a month.
Yeah.
Probably.
Since before, did we film once after we went? We did film once after we went to
We must have. Yeah.
Myrtle.
Yeah, we must have. So yeah, this is our first time in a month. I am really busy with life right now. I kind of over planned our school year as far as like extracurricular things, which is good in a way because it's helping us, we're new-ish to the area and we're like making friends through like all this stuff. But it's bad in a way in that like I don't have a lot of time to do other things, and some of the activities I'm like,
but you're using your time well, so that's what matters.
Yeah. So anyway, that's why I've just been the weekends when we usually film, I've been having to catch up on stuff like I was telling my dad, cleaning my bathroom and cleaning the grill. And now that we have like, it's interesting having like something I didn't expect about having a house that's a lot more work than I thought is like landscaping stuff, like dealing with like plants and dealing with like the deck and just dealing with like outside things, which like really is not terrible and it's a good problem to have. I'm not complaining, but it's like last week I spent like 3 hours pulling out old plants out of like our front.
When you said one of your friends was talking about, geez, I'm always mowing the lawn. And
yeah. It's just weird how that stuff, like, it's nice because my husband is home right now because he is still in the process of like waiting to hear if he passed the bar exam or not. And then he can like start actually, it's funny because he actually has a job interview on Friday. But
law?
Yeah, a law job. But they can't even really hire him until he passes the bar. So like really it's kind of an interview for like maybe in the future. So right now it's just like hard because we're in flux. But the nice thing,
a network, yeah, you gotta establish some connections.
Yeah. And the nice thing about that is that like as frustrating it is for him to like not be working and doing what he wants to do, it's nice to have him home all the time. And it's nice to have him do stuff like he's done all the mowing in the yard. He like, digs up our raised garden bed where we're growing spinach and carrots, the first things we've grown.
Are the carrots germinating yet?
They're starting to like have little tiny shoots pop up. It's kind of fun. And
yeah, their carrots are cute because they have those little tendril things coming up. Spinach is like a regular leaf coming up.
Yeah.
But carrots have they're almost like asparagus. They're just real wispy.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, we've just been like, and I know things will slow down once like, winter comes, we'll be doing less stuff outside. We won't have to mow as much. And
you don't actually have to really mow at all between late October and early April, I'd say.
Even now it's slowing down. Like
it's slowing down, you can see it. Yeah.
We're in like the second week of September and it's been getting cold at night. So like it, down to like 50, the low 50s. So it's
yeah, it was nice and cool, I thought.
Yeah.
You guys chilled yourself too much there.
we kind of got like sore throats and colds, although that stuff's been going around. I don't know if it's like just because of how cold it was, but I think having our house get so cold at night put our immune systems on it weakened them to the point where we got these little colds. So Anyway, we're doing fine though. My oldest daughter is really the only one who's like having a hard time of it. I have like a sore throat, but I'm not coughing at all, which is good. She's like coughing, and we're trying to get her to not cough because every time you cough, it like is making her throat worse. So anyway, yeah, that's our life right now. Just busy with school. And
that reminds me of some old words to bring up. Qatar and Coryza. You ever hear of those?
No.
Yeah, you'll have to look them up later.
All right.
They have to do with like coughing and crud in your respiratory system and stuff like that.
All right, will do. Yeah, I have this like throat spray right here. I tried to get my daughter to take some earlier because it's supposed to, it's pretty good. I bottled these like, because I actually had a pretty bad cough, I don't know, like 2 months ago, month and a half ago or something. And so I went to the drugstore and I just bought like all the natural products because I don't want to, like, since I'm pregnant, I don't want to take a bunch of like hardcore stuff. So this is like, I think all this is, let me see. It's raw honey, raw apple cider vinegar, rose hips, echinacea tops, sage leaf, and bee pollen, I think. And it's
sounds like stuff that would kick off your allergies, if anything.
It's like the vinegar is so, it's like mostly vinegar. It's really strong. And so she will not use it. But anyway.
Tell her she has to gargle with kombucha.
She wouldn't like that so much. She's not a huge kombucha fan. My younger one,
she doesn't like it. Yeah.
My younger one loves kombucha. And I actually just put some in the fridge yesterday that I had, it just finished its second ferment. I made apple cinnamon kombucha and I made pear ginger kombucha. I haven't tried either of them yet, but
interesting.
There's some nice fall flavors. So
you said you ferment them secondarily too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that was the second ferment. And like, if anyone's interested in kombucha, because I'm getting all homesteady now. Yeah, you basically make tea and sugar and add like a thing called a SCOBY to it, which is a symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast. And that ferments the tea. So you just leave that go for like, I don't know, 2 weeks usually. And it gets kind of fermenty. So it turns all the sugar into, I don't even know, what does it turn it into? It just feeds on it. And then you get lots of good.
It really kind of makes it vinegary. It turns it into an acid, really.
Yeah.
There's not much alcohol. There's a little bit of alcohol.
Yeah, not too much. If you only do it for
mainly like acids, probiotics.
Yeah, good probiotics, which is good. And then you can take that and add like either fruit or more sugar to it and put it in like smaller containers and it'll carbonate more. And that's what I like.
You can just go old school and drink it plain.
Yeah, you can. And you can even just add it to a bottle by itself.
It's not real palatable that way.
It's kind of like drinking this, to be honest. It's
kind of like drinking apple cider vinegar.
Yeah. Although I don't know, I like it more than that because you get like the tea flavor, and it's not like, most of the time it's not super. My dad makes it pretty strong. When I only let mine go for 2 weeks, it's not usually too vinegary. So, but it's good. It's really good for you, for your like gut and stuff. So I like it. I try to drink it.
So are we going to get onto some ineffabilities, or are we just going to talk about all these?
Sure, we can talk about stuff. Yeah, I wanted to talk about good news because I just feel like so much of the news right now, I don't know, I also just don't want to be like a news show, but I feel like so much has happened since we last spoke, like I don't think any of the stuff from like Afghanistan had happened. when we last talked.
No, really, yeah, that's right.
And that's
all
kind
that
of
Afghanistan pullout really kind of came down a little too rapidly.
Yeah, and then like
without as much planning as maybe there should have been.
And then like the whole, you know, now the news is all about Biden mandating that companies require their employees to get vaccinated.
I'm not sure that's legal.
It's definitely not constitutional.
I think that's going to be challenged. It's just another example of governments using crises, so-called crises, to usurp people's rights.
Well, and it's also like crazy how much we've distorted the role of the president. Like the president does not make law, right? That's not his job. He's supposed to execute law, and he's like the head of the military. That's why they call it the executive branch, because he's executing. He's not the legislative branch where they're legislating. So it's crazy to me. So like he made a mandate that was like all federal employees have to be vaccinated. That's actually like under his jurisdiction in the sense that he is in charge of like the federal government, so he can like execute that order and say, I want to have all of the employees vaccinated. But the like weird like sleight of hand that he's doing with like getting involved with OSHA and being like, okay, now OSHA is making this mandate, which is like occupational safety and health, whatever. I don't even.
It's like the CDC telling landlords that they can't evict anybody.
Yeah.
During the pandemic.
It's like we're getting.
How the heck does the CDC have any authority over basically taking over private property and deciding that, okay, it's not really private. You have to do what we say with your property.
Yeah, it's strange to me how, like, OSHA is really supposed to be something that's protecting people from occupational hazards, right? Like things that like companies would be exposing their employees to.
Right.
And now they're mandating that these employees protect each other. Like, I really don't understand the justification for it. I mean, there's no like, as far as I'm aware, I'm not a constitutional expert, but it definitely is something that seems to be unconstitutional on the face of it. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Hopefully, I think my husband said yesterday that there's already a lawsuit. Actually, no, that might have been about the Texas abortion thing.
Yeah, there's already a lot. There's already yeah.
The Department of Justice
coming from the federal government saying that the Texas laws. That's another one we probably should talk about.
Well, so yeah, I was gonna say like, okay, so there's all these like negative things that have happened. The Afghanistan thing, the vaccine mandate thing. Like, I mean, obviously we just talked about it, and I think that it is a good example of like the slow creep of government just like taking more control, and how like we see executive orders, and it's not like Biden's the first person to do this. I think Trump and Obama and probably like probably people before have used.
Everybody who gets the hammer looks for things to nail.
Well, and like they just start doing these little things of being like, okay, I'll make an executive order to do this, and it's like, can you actually do that as an executive order? Doesn't that have to go through the legislature? But we let it slide once, and then it's like, okay, now it's like Biden can just tell private companies what to do with an executive order, which is, once again, not constitutional, not within his realm of power, but we, at least some people accept it.
There's become a benchmark that's been established, and then they just continue on with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's obviously a negative thing that's happened. And then today is actually the anniversary of September 11th. It's September 11th today.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a crazy time, especially with the Taliban coming to power again in Afghanistan, it's like kind of interesting that
the Taliban wasn't really a threat to America, but they did harbor Al Qaeda, who was a threat to America. The Taliban is basically the hyper conservative, religious authority in the country that wants to turn back the clock. That's probably what a lot of liberals think that the pro-life people are like, and that the that a lot of the more so-called moral majority are like, is that we are throwbacks, that we're more responsive to old traditions than we are to progress.
And actually, like, I almost agree with them in the sense that I think that a lot of times people are trying to legislate morality. And I think that we should not, as a government, legislate morality. I think that's not something we should do. But I think that a lot of the things that people assume are legislating morality is actually not that. So like a good example of that would be like the abortion issue. You can view it as like, oh, you think it's like wrong because God says so, so do you want to make it wrong for everybody? Like, if it was just that, then of course we shouldn't make a law about it. Like, that's why I personally think, once again, like, me as a religious person, I think that marriage is between one man and one woman. And I think that that's like what marriage was meant to be. I think that creates the most stable familial bonds and relationships. And I think that the breakdown of that causes a lot of social ills. But I don't think I don't think that we should have a law saying that that's what, I don't think the government should have any say in what marriage is. And I think any consenting adults who want to make a contract with each other about anything, business, personal, domestic, whatever it is, I think that they should be able to do so. Like like from a legislative, legal point of view. Okay, so that's where I would say like Republicans are probably legislating morality. Now you can make an argument like the government has a vested interest in establishing stable families. I think that that's like, I think when you start saying the government has a vested interest in messing with people's personal lives, then you get into a lot of issues like you should get vaccinated and not have the choice in the matter. Like, I think that's, so anyway, I just think that shouldn't be a legal issue at all. Now, when
the principle is that it's none of the government's business and they ought to have nothing to say about it.
Yeah. So that's where I would say the left is probably correct about saying that the right, or Republicans or whatever you want to say, are legislating morality when it comes to same-sex marriage or whatever. I would say they're legislating morality when they say that you can't have like polygamy, when you can't have polygamous marriages.
Or that you have to serve and provide whatever kind of services on demand to whoever, without regard to your own personal morality. Like, the whole cake situation. And I mean, that's just an example of what they're talking about, is that, they want to get involved in the market and make sure that there's not discrimination.
It's the same thing with like the Little Sisters of the Poor being forced to like, pay for contraceptives and abortifacients and that kind of stuff. Now, I would say the abortion issue is not legislating morality, because I truly view, like, I think abortion is abhorrent. I think it's the worst crime in our world right now. And I think that it is an offense against God. Like, I think that God does not want like people to be aborted, obviously.
There's a lot of things that happen that God doesn't want.
Now, well, yeah, you could say, that's my point. I'm saying you could say the same thing about.
I do a lot of things that I imagine God is like,
sure,
oh, come
me
on,
too.
Will. Can't, why?
I do too. I mean, like, yeah, I'm the first to like, I was going on a tirade with my husband last week about the fact that, like, you know, we went to confession and there's this giant line for confession. There's never enough priests. There's more people waiting to go to confession than like, anyway, I think that we have a sore lack of emphasis on confession in the church right now. Anyway, putting that aside, I was going to say the issue of abortion, though, I do think you can make a purely legal point that abortion should be outlawed. There's lots of secular people who make I hate the word pro-choice. I told my husband I'm not saying pro-choice or pro-life anymore. I'm saying pro-science and science deniers, because really, if you look at the science of what a fetus is, a baby, an unborn child, as soon as that, and it's interesting, Dave Rubin,
even prior to implantation,
yes,
it's a human organism.
Yeah, Austin Peterson has said before, you know, if we found one cell of life on another planet, we would all freak out and be like, there's life on another planet, there's life on another planet. But we have, you know, not even mentioning 1 cell or 2 celled or 3 celled, like, baby fetus in the womb. We're talking about like way past that, like 6, 12, 20 weeks, whatever you want to say, of gestation of a life that has its own DNA. It is, you know, self-replicating. It meets all the criteria for biological definition of life. That's when that is what you're killing in an abortion. So to me,
and it's clearly human life too. I mean, if you check the DNA,
yeah,
it's human DNA.
Yeah, and I think the left, or not the left, the people who are pro-abortion, who are anti-science, that's what I'm calling them, because that's what they are. I think the only way that they can actually make the case now that abortion should be allowed or legitimate is to say either that it's a human life, but it's not a human being, because you get some sort of beinghood or personhood put on you at a different time. Then you have to argue about when that happens, which I think is any time that you make that argument, it's going to be arbitrary. So I think that that's obviously a bad way to go. Or you can say, yes, it's a human life.
When kids reach the age of reason.
Yeah, I mean, there are philosophers who
age 8, until age 8, they're just
your property.
They're human potential.
Yeah.
But they're not actually human. They've not actualized humans.
I mean, there were people in my philosophy program who would make arguments like that, and now they wouldn't say it in the context of abortion, but they would say there are lots of people who think that you're not really a human being until age 2, you know, age 7, you're an adult, like whatever it is, it's all like.
What if you're a profoundly retarded or demented person? Can you lose personhood?
Funny you say that, because this is a great quote that my husband sent me. Hold on, I felt like I was in the middle of a point. I was going to say, so the only 2 arguments that the left can make is either it's a human life, but it's not a human person, or it is a human being that you're killing, but the choice of the mother is more important than the life of the human being. So the right to autonomy of the mother is more important than the right to life of the human being. Those are the only arguments that I can see that are legitimate now, because they're unless you're going to just completely deny the science of a baby is like an unborn fetus is a human being, I can't see how you're going to make any other point. And it's interesting that, do you know Dave Rubin? He's like a guy, he's like a YouTuber. He used to be like pretty hardcore left, but he says he left the left, and now he's like, he calls himself a classical liberal. He's, you know, fairly libertarian on most issues, I would say. Anyway, it's interesting because he is what he calls reluctantly pro-choice. He thinks that, I believe his position is until 12 weeks, basically, that there are situations, like it's always horrible, and he does acknowledge that it is the taking of a human life. But he basically says until 12 weeks, the mother should be able to decide in like horrible circumstances and that kind of stuff. He is a...
Why 12 weeks? What's the basis for that?
I don't know. I don't know enough about his... I will try to find something where he talks about it more and link it below. I know he wrote a book where he talks about his position, about his positions on lots of things, but he does talk about abortion specifically in that book. I will link all that below if you're interested. I don't know his justification for 12 weeks. I think his justification is like, by 12 weeks, you will know, like most of the time people know if it's going to affect the health of the mother. Mm-hmm. And by 12 weeks, you often know if there's going to be like severe issues with the baby. I don't know. Once again,
traditionally, there was a time called the quickening.
Yeah.
Which was when somebody other than the mother or somebody other than the mother could actually feel fetal movement.
Yeah.
Or detect fetal. I think you can detect fetal heartbeat earlier now.
Oh yeah.
Because we have better, which is why I think 6 weeks is probably, that's probably a reasonable time. I mean, by then you're going to be able to detect heartbeat and determine a lot of things.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just found
But at the same time, I would have to say I'm probably reluctantly, I wouldn't call it anti-science. I'd call it, I guess I would have to call it pro-choice. The liberty of the woman to decide what happens to things that are in her body, even though they happen to be other living beings. I'd have to say in a way does take precedence over, even though it's a baby the instant sperm meets an egg.
Yeah.
You know, you call it a fetus, call it tissue, call it whatever you want. It's a baby.
Yeah.
You know, you ever see those bumper stickers where it says, if it's not a baby, you're not pregnant?
Yeah. You come down on the side of the right of autonomy or liberty or whatever you want to call it of the mother supersedes the right of the
just
child
on principle.
Yeah, I would disagree with that, but let me finish my point about Rubin, which I thought was really interesting. So Rubin is he's a gay married man, and
he's a married man.
He's a gay married man. So he's
married man. Okay.
So he's married to a man, and his husband and him are trying to conceive via surrogacy. They've been trying.
That's probably their best chance.
They've been trying. They've been trying. I don't want to get the details wrong, but he just talked about this recently. I think they've had like a few miscarriages. And anyway, the point that I found really interesting is that even from him, who is somebody who is, as he says, reluctantly pro-choice, like he acknowledges that it is a life that you're taking, a baby. He said, like, I don't want to misquote him because I swear this is what he said. I will link it below, but I swear he said 3 days post sperm and egg meeting, the doctor can say, do you want us to implant a male fetus or a female fetus? And he's like, that's 3 days. after sperm meets egg. You can't detect pregnancy.
There's enough development by
Yeah.
then to be able to assess gender.
To test the genetic material.
Sex, gender, I get confused about those
To
things.
test the genetic
They
material.
used to be synonymous, sex and gender.
Yeah. But he's like, if you can detect if it's a male or a female, how is it not a human life? Like 3 days. Anyway, I found that really interesting. The thing that you were saying about if you have like mental retardation, you know, like
and you lose your personhood through either dementia or just a developmental disorder.
So this is a quote from this is actually like current law in the United States. It was a court case called Jacobson versus Massachusetts. I don't know what year this is from. I'll look it up in a minute. But he says this was the majority opinion, I believe. In view of the general declarations of the legislature and the specific findings of the court, obviously we cannot say as matter of law that the grounds do not exist, and if they exist, they justify the result. We have seen more than once that the public welfare may call upon the best citizens for their lives. It would be strange if it could not call upon those who already sap the strength of the state for these lesser sacrifices, often not felt to be such by those concerned, in order to prevent our being swamped with incompetence. It is better for all the world if instead of waiting to execute degenerate offspring for crime, or to let them starve for their imbecility, society can prevent those who are manifestly unfit from continuing their kind. The principle that sustains compulsory vaccination is broad enough to cover cutting the fallopian tubes. 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. So I know that
who said
this is Jacobson versus Massachusetts. This is current U.S. law. This was in 1905.
Oh.
It was a United States Supreme Court case in which the court upheld the authority of states to enforce compulsory vaccination laws. But that quote is saying basically
they're also allowing forced sterilization.
Yes, they're forcing sterilization on people who the state decides are imbeciles, because they say that it's better to force sterilize them than wait until their kids grow up to be criminals and have to execute them. That is in US law. Isn't that insane?
That is insane. That reminds me of this might be off topic, but that reminds me of this. I was reading this thing and I followed the rabbit hole, and then I was reading one of the guys who posted and he had all these books about, I think it was called Anti-Natalism.
Okay, yeah.
Have you ever heard of such a thing?
Oh yeah, there's a big Jordan Peterson has talked about this before, and I learned about it in my existentialism class, actually, in philosophy. But anti-natalism is like the stance that basically it's better for human beings to not have been born. We should stop populating the earth as human beings. It's like suicide, like a lot of people some people take it far enough to say like suicide is like the morally better choice. A lot of people would say that actually, once again, this gets into what we were talking about before. Some people would say like once you're born or reach adulthood or whatever, then like then you don't have like a duty to commit suicide, but it's better to abort humans before they're born, to not reproduce at all, like that.
This guy took the stance that by having reproductive intercourse, you are actually committing a crime against whatever is conceived, because You're bringing it into a world that is full of pain and suffering. So you're condemning it to be, to have to basically live in prison.
Yeah.
It's false. It's false imprisonment. It's
Yeah. It's involuntary servitude or whatever. Yeah, it's funny that like this kind of thought, like most people don't take it.
And that you should be able to sue your parents for maltreatment.
Yeah.
Because they brought you into life.
Yeah, and it wasn't
like, look what you've done to me. You've given me a life, and now I have to suffer and I have to exist.
And it was
dare you?
Yeah, against your
just for your own pleasure.
Yeah, you had no choice in the matter. It's funny, like the strains of thought of that are like in the general society. Like a lot of times you'll see people tweet stuff like, oh, I'm like, now I'm an adult, I have to pay taxes, I have to go to work, and like all just because my parents decided I should be alive. I didn't want to like decide that, which is like, I actually think I just finished reading
I didn't ask to be born.
Yeah. I just finished reading Jordan Peterson's book Beyond Order, which is like the sequel to 12 Rules for Life. And the last chapter is about, oh man, let me find the chapter title because I don't want to get it wrong. But I mean, he talks about like anti-natalism kind of a lot in the book, actually.
I think it's a fascinating perversion of, like, hey, this is against my will. I was brought into existence against my will. You didn't have a will.
Yeah.
You didn't have a will until you were brought into existence. Now that you have a will, you can choose to do whatever you want with the time that you have. If you don't want to live, I don't think anybody should be compelled to live. If they really don't want to live, if people really want to die, and as long as they're doing it on their own and they're not taking other people out by it or forcing other people to kill them, like suicide by cop is a horrible thing. Suicide by any means where other people have to have some kind of involvement in it is awful. Like, you want to commit suicide, go jump into the middle of the ocean where nobody has to leave a note that says, hey, I've gone off to be eaten by jellyfish. Don't look for me. Goodbye, cruel world.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like the suicide in the three signs that you were mentioning, that movie yesterday, the three billboards.
Oh, three billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Where Woody puts the hood over himself. He puts a note on and says, "Don't look in the bag."
Yeah.
That's a kind of a kind way to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna do it, that's about as respectful to the survivors as you can get.
Yeah. Which isn't much.
How did I get there? Man, that's all of a sudden this took a dark turn.
Well, we were talking about anti-natalism.
The natalism.
Yeah.
The natalism. I just found that so absurd.
Yeah.
So ridiculous to say, okay, my life is not a gift.
Yeah.
My life is a curse. You've cursed me and you've punished me unfairly against my will.
Yeah.
If we waited for people to ask to be born, no one would be born.
Yeah. So the I feel like the two last rules in 12 rules for life. The 11th rule is, sorry, this is in Beyond Order, which is 12 more rules for life.
Okay.
So do not allow yourself to become resentful, deceitful, or arrogant. And then the last rule is be grateful in spite of your suffering. And that's not easy to do, especially like, you know, I actually have been like watching a lot of Jordan Peterson lately because I don't want to read the news. I don't want to watch anything political or like in the news. And I want to like better myself and I want to learn more and whatever. But he is like really, he's suffering a lot right now. You know, he like physically he's going through, he's had like a lot of issues in the last few years. His wife was basically diagnosed with terminal cancer. And then she had this like weird surgery that like was not like experimental, but it was like it's only been used a few times. And she basically had a completely miraculous recovery. But like imagine being told like your wife is gonna die, and then like your world gets turned upside down, and then like that doesn't happen, and then you get so sick that like you're literally in a coma and like across the world. Anyway, he's had a lot of suffering lately, and he's still suffering the effects of like all the health issues that he's gone through. But I don't know. I've found that book. It took me a long time to read Beyond Order because it's very just the way Jordan writes. Like every
is
sentence.
it like the consolation of philosophy where the fellow's thrown into prison and he has to find reasons to still affirm life and affirm that life is good, even though my circumstances scream that, you go in, you say good morning to some people and it's like, what's the damn good about it?
Well, and like,
well, I don't know. What did you make good about it?
Yeah. And the reality of life is like that life is full of suffering. Like that's the basis of almost every religion, right? Like life.
And yet this is the day the Lord has made. Let's rejoice and be glad in it.
And
even if it's a rainy, crappy day, even if somebody's dying that you love, even if you're dying, even if, the crops are on fire and, the house looks like it's next, we still have to be grateful that, we've got what we got.
Yeah. And like, I do think it's important. Like, I think that anti-natalism view, like I don't think that that's a hard thing to I don't think that that's a hard conclusion to come to if you believe that like this life is all that there is. Because this life does suck in a lot of ways, and more so for some people than others. And like people get sick and people die, and little kids get sick and they die, and they think, God, what a waste of life. Like it just causes nothing but suffering. But like we as Christians, like we can look, the one thing on my wall right now is Jesus on the cross. And like I look at that and I just think like the one thing on my wall in my bedroom. I have other stuff on the walls in other rooms.
You see it behind the light there?
Oh yeah, there's your crucifix. Yeah. It's like the point of life is that we can take the suffering that is inevitable and make something good out of it. Like that.
It can be redeemed.
And and like, I was very, I had a lot of morning sickness at the beginning of this pregnancy, and it was like so rough. I was like, this is horrible. Like I'd really rather not do this. And I was talking to my friend who she has it much worse than me. She's had 2 kids and she's had hyperemesis with both of them, where she's basically so sick she has to go to the hospital, and she's throwing up every day from literally like the start of her pregnancy until she gives birth. Ugh. She said, and she said, like, I was talking to her and I was like, I'm struggling with the idea of like offering up my suffering for other people. But I just feel like if I don't do that, then I am going to be like, what's the point of all this? And
Right.
I have to believe that it's going to.
If I don't make a point of it, it seems pointless.
Well, and to me, I was more struggling with the idea of like, how can my suffering affect the soul of like, you know, somebody in purgatory? Like, I don't understand how that causes.
How does Jesus dying on a cross somehow redeem our sins? It's a mystery of faith.
Yeah.
It's a substitutional, suffering.
Yeah.
You can suffer, and that can help pay the debt of suffering that is owed due to sin.
Yeah. And she was basically making the point, like, the only person who wants you to despair about that is the devil, like, because he doesn't want you to offer. She's like, you know what, like, your suffering can get a lot of your family members out of purgatory. And I'm like, I need to think about that, even if it doesn't make sense to me. Like, I have a hard time accepting things that are like mysteries that don't make sense to me. I'm really I have a lot of like pride in my intelligence. Like, I have a hard time admitting that I don't understand something. Like, that is like a huge.
And yet God's ways are so high above ours that all we can do is sit on his lap and say goo.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that, like, truly at the end of the day, like, I think about this a lot, and this might be something that like a lot of Catholic people would disagree with or whatever. But I think, like, even if it's not true, even if my suffering has no bearing on, the souls of other people or whatever, if it does nothing, me believing it is almost more important, in the sense that, like, it gives me the strength to get up and do what I need to do every day. Like,
I often think that way. I don't want to despair about the power of prayer.
Yeah.
But I often think that prayer is something that helps to focus my energy.
Yeah.
I don't know how it sometimes seems mysterious and even kind of selfish for me to think that I can direct any of God's energy anywhere.
Yeah.
But I do feel that when I pray, and when I pray a rosary and I devote it to something like the souls of those who died in 9/11,
Yeah.
or the souls of all the Afghani people who have suffered because of our invasion through the years and our stupid, defense mistakes.
Yeah.
The people who died innocently. I don't know that I can actually affect that, but believing that I can makes me feel like I'm a better person for doing it. It's like praying for the living and the dead is a work of mercy, and it does make you more virtuous when you do it.
Yeah.
As opposed to not doing it, as opposed to just saying, to heck with them, I can't do anything about it. I just, throw my hands up and not, refuse to be engaged. This is God's world. God put me here for some reason. If I have something to do, and maybe all I can do is pray, then dang it, I better start praying. I better get praying. If that's the best I can do, then I better do it.
Yeah. I also think, like, I've struggled a lot with prayer too, in terms of like I can't know God's will. So like when I pray for something, like, if I pray for something, like I pray that my husband gets a job, or I pray that he, like, that will, like, that everything goes.
One of those 7-figure jobs you're talking
about. No. Like, whatever it is, it's like, well, first of all, is my prayer actually gonna like change anything? If it's not God's will, then like what is my prayer gonna do? If I pray that like somebody that I love recovers from an illness, but like if it's their time, it's their time to go, like whatever it is. I've struggled with that idea. But at the same time, I think praying also does focus you on being, and if you're praying well, then hopefully you're saying like, if it is your will, God. And then like I do think prayer focuses you in the sense that if it doesn't happen, then you have to be like, this must not have been God's will. And I have to accept that. And I have to accept that I can't understand God's will. I can't understand how all the pieces of things, and that's really hard, especially when something like you lose a child, like you lose a loved one, you lose a spouse early. Like, it's like, how could that possibly be God's will? But when you accept that whatever happens is his will, I do think like, just even if it's not true, even if there is no God who's directing anything, I like believing it is the only way that I'm going to get through that suffering. Like, I really think that.
Yeah. It does. Yeah. Right.
It's like, you know, the story of Sisyphus who pushes the rock up the hill.
Yeah, I know.
Every day.
I live it. I live that story.
Me too. Like every day, you know, like we all in a way are living that story. If you don't know the story of Sisyphus, he's like what is it?
Sisyphus thinks he had it so bad. I've got plantar fasciitis right now. It's really hard to push that rock when your foot is hurting you. You know, Sisyphus is a whiner. Baby.
Was Sisyphus a Greek myth or a Roman myth? I can never remember. But
Prometheus, I think it was like Prometheus and Sisyphus, and I think it's probably Greek.
I think they were Greek. Anyway, it's a Greek myth about somebody who I think he brought fire to human beings, maybe, and like
that was Prometheus who did that. I don't know what Sisyphus did.
I don't know. Sisyphus did something to anger the gods, so then his punishment was every day he had to roll a giant boulder basically up a hill, and at the end of the day the boulder would just roll back down, right? Like, wasn't
he'd have to walk down, and then the next day he'd just do it again.
Have to do it again, and like
it's so pointless.
And we talk
so absurd.
We actually talk about that in like my existentialism class a lot, because that is like, sometimes I do the dishes at night and I'm like, I've done the dishes every night for the last however many years that I've like had my family, and I'm gonna do these same dishes every night for like ever, because you know the dishes need to be done. And it's like, you have to think that Sisyphus found meaning and joy in like pushing the boulder up the hill, and I need to do the same thing. Like when I'm washing the same load of laundry, when I'm making the beds, when I'm like doing the same, when I'm changing the diaper for the 1,000th time, it's like, yeah, it's a lot of my life as a mom is pushing the boulder up the hill. And like, just everybody, that's everybody's life. It's pushing the boulder up the hill and knowing that you're going to have to do the same thing tomorrow. But the challenge is finding meaning in that, and like making it worth something.
Is recognizing the value of it, even though the value is not, it doesn't seem like the value is lasting, and that the value is inherent.
Yeah.
You know, it's a meaning and a value that we impose on it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the story about the guy who's walking along the beach after a storm, and there's 1 million starfish on the beach.
Yeah.
And he's walking along and he's grabbing starfish and throwing them back in the ocean.
Yeah.
And some guy comes along and says, dude, there's 1 million starfish on the beach. What difference what does throwing them back in matter? And he says, it matters to this one.
Yeah.
You know, and it matters that I'm doing this dish. I want this dish clean. I want it clean today. It matters that I'm doing this thing today, and I'm doing it to the best of my ability. And I'm, to the glory goes God. I don't know what value it has. I don't know how it weaves into the beautiful tapestry of existence that God is creating. But I do have faith that God created me to do certain things. I'm not even sure what they are yet. I'm not sure that I've done them. I'm not sure that I've done them as well as I should, but I need to continue to try to do them as well as I can and give glory to God through it.
Yeah.
And that's the point of my life.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I think I've talked about this book.
And I don't have to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Mine is, and
Yeah.
I don't even have to understand it. I just have to do it. Mine is not to reason why. Mine is just to do.
Yeah. I think I've talked about this book several times before, but in the book A Mother's Rule of Life, she talks about how, like, you know, she got her life in order in the sense that she started, like, her life was chaos, and then she made this like kind of system to help get her life in order. And then after a while she was like, I'm bored, I don't want to do this anymore, like, even though things are going better. And she realized, like, if this is just all about me and making my life better, like, there's no reason to do it. Like, I'm going to get lazy and not do it. So she had to start being like, at the start of every task she did, being like, this is for you, Jesus. Like, this isn't even just for my family. Like, yes, it is for my husband and my kids, but there's gonna be lots of times where I'm mad at my husband and my kids are annoying me, and I'm like, screw it, I don't want to wash your dishes because you're annoying me. And like,
I don't feel very loving, so I'm not going to do loving things.
Yeah. So ultimately what we have to say is, like, I am washing this dish as if I'm washing it for Jesus, because I am washing it for Jesus, because the people in my life who I'm doing these things for, they are the embodiment. Like, you know, they
are the least brothers that.
Yeah. Well, and they were made in the image and likeness of God. Like, when I do this for them, I'm doing it for Jesus. And like,
even imbeciles. Even imbeciles.
And that's not like something, I'm not saying that I'm good at remembering that, because I'm not.
And I'm not saying you're an imbecile, but I've been burdened with a whole crew of imbeciles for a long time.
Yeah.
Thank God. It made me a better person to serve these imbeciles my whole life.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lord, for the imbeciles that I have been able to serve.
Hopefully I can get some of my purgatory time.
Does that sound like a sincere praise?
Thank you, God, for giving me all these idiots that I can just try to not kill every day. Yeah. I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up. I think
it probably is. Yeah. I've cheered myself up now. That's good.
No, I think this was good. Like, talking about, you know, finding meaning in the inevitable suffering of life. Like, that's what more important. I mean, besides like our salvation through Jesus, what more important topic is there? Because that's.
Yeah. And isn't that where we find that salvation? I mean, Jesus told us what the final test is going to be. When he comes in his glory and he says, okay, sheep over here, goats over there, and all of a sudden we find ourselves on one side or another, we're going to be asking, hey, why am I over here with all these goats? It's like, well, what you didn't do for the least of my brothers, you didn't do for me. You were supposed to be performing works of mercy all along. You're supposed to be praying for the living and the dead. You're supposed to be admonishing sinners and counseling the doubtful. And all you did was eat watermelon and complain. You know, get over that. I mean, that's purely goat behavior. You've earned it.
Yeah.
Bad. You're bad.
So funny, because we went to this is like a random story to end, but we went to this zoo yesterday, this nature center, and it's funny because we saw all these cool animals. Like, we saw wolves and bears. Like, the bears were just awesome, you know. Like, you see a bear and you're like, how do people? It was a cool experience seeing all these cool animals. And then, like, my daughter's favorite animal that she saw was the goats and the sheep. Like, what you were just talking about, the sheep on one side and the goats on the other. It's like the sheep and the goats, it's like so lame, but she loved it. Anyway, Also, here's a funny little thing to end on. There was a poll that was done. I'll add the link in the description, but there was a poll that was done that said, like, how confident are you that you could beat an animal in a fight? Okay, so they did this with Americans and they did this with like British people. Let me just find. I'll pull it up and I'll share my screen. Hold on one second. Because my husband and I yesterday.
It's weird because I was thinking about that one time when I was walking the dog. I was thinking, what if a mountain lion came up?
Yeah.
Could the dog and I somehow coordinate an attack in order to like actually either fend off or defeat this mountain lion? It's like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think both of us would go down pretty quick. We'd both become lunch for the mountain lion.
Yeah, at least with your dog, that's probably the case. Let me share my screen here real quick.
I saw an interesting statistic too. Today it was on the question of the day. Alexa said, what country has the highest population of tigers? And I thought India, right? India has the most wild.
Well, I'm gonna guess the US.
United States has the highest population of tigers.
Just because of
all
zoos.
living in cages, but
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, that sucks.
Okay, so
this was it was interesting because we saw these bears yesterday, and my husband was like, "There's no way that a human could actually win against a fight in a bear, right?" I'm like, "There's no way." And then it's funny because there's 6 people in America who think that they would win in a fight.
6%. 6%.
Yeah, 6%. Which I'm like, that's crazy. Like, who would think that? Anyway, I
think they could actually beat a grizzly bear. Even a survivalist who's probably got weapons and tactics that are above and beyond the, just the naive, I've got a pointy stick.
Yeah.
I'm gonna grizzly bears are huge. Have you heard of those Pisleys?
No.
A Pisley is a cross between a grizzly bear and a polar bear.
Oh
now that polar bears are having to move further south, and grizzly bears are moving further north due to the
climate change
and the the urbanization and just the civilization pushing grizzly bears north. Grizzly bears and polar bears are mating.
That's terrifying.
It is, because a polar bear is gigantic and a grizzly bear is vicious.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh boy, we've created a Godzilla.
Yeah. I also found it was interesting that only 72% of Americans think they can beat a rat in a fight. Like, well, I don't understand.
My wife doesn't think she could beat a moth in a fight. She flees in horror and says, kill it.
I need to know more about like the stipulations of like, is it like I'm naked against this? That like, because if I just wear shoes, I'm pretty sure I can beat a rat. Like,
I'm thinking they're underestimating a house cat. House cats they've got claws and teeth. Yeah, and they can be vicious. Dogs generally are they're not as I don't think they're as successful predators as house cats are. House cats can get out there and they can live on their own. They can bring home chipmunks and put them in your bed, and it's like, here, look what I brought home for you. You don't seem to be able to hunt for yourself.
Yeah. So, cats do.
Here's half a chipmunk.
Cats bring you like dead animals and stuff. Dogs don't really do that.
No.
At least domesticated. We were talking about how funny it is that, dogs are basically all descended from wolves, right? And like we saw the wolves at the zoo and we were like, man, wolves are just so cool and like majestic. And now like through human selection, we've made them into like chihuahuas and just like the lamest
right,
ever.
right.
Like, we were
And
saying
those little teacup dogs. How is that at all related to a wolf?
Yeah.
Those
And it's
little
like
nippy
there's two lessons to take away from that. First of all, as you like to say, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because you can breed a dog to turn it into a chihuahua doesn't mean you should. And also, like, humans thinking that they're messing with, like, you know, the laws of nature and science probably is not really a good idea. Anyway.
Right. That's how the Wuhan happened.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's probably why the gene pool, you know, I don't want to get too into eugenics and stuff, you know, neutering imbeciles, but it does seem like there's a lot of imbeciles around, and they seem to be perfectly capable of reproducing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But God bless them. We need our imbeciles. I've got to have somebody to serve.
That's true.
If I was serving my peers, I'd have to look long and hard to find somebody who is up here.
Oh man. Anyway, I could make a bunch more comments, but we should. I thought this was a good episode. Yeah, I'm not promising any regularity with like the posting schedule, but I don't want this podcast to go away completely because I really enjoy doing it. It's just a busy time of life right now, so it's not going to be like every week, but
and it's time for lunch.
Yeah, hopefully like every month maybe. So
yeah.
All right. Thanks for joining us today, everybody. Go out.
God bless everybody. Attitude of gratitude goes a long way.
Yeah,
keep pushing that rock up the hill and loving it.
Yep. All right. Bye, everyone.
Embrace your rock.